The crystalline ships of the Galactic Council hung like suspended diamonds above New Shanghai's gleaming towers. Sarah Chen pressed her hands against the classroom window, watching their prismatic surfaces scatter rainbow patterns across the morning sky. Most of her classmates had grown used to the alien vessels during their month-long stay, but Sarah found herself mesmerized by their impossible geometries. "Happy birthday to you." The familiar melody pulled her attention back to the classroom. Her best friend, Min, led their classmates in song, carrying a small cupcake with a single candle. Sarah felt her cheeks flush as 24 voices joined in celebration of her 12th birthday. The door slid open before she could blow out the candle. Principal Zhang entered, followed by two beings that made the cupcake freeze halfway to Sarah's lips. The aliens stood nearly 7 feet tall, their iridescent robes flowing as if caught in an invisible breeze. Their elongated heads housed 4 eyes each, all focused intently on her. "Class 7A, please welcome representatives from the Galactic Council," Principal Zhang announced, her voice carrying a slight tremor. "They're here to make a very special announcement." The taller of the two beings stepped forward, its translator crystal pulsing with soft blue light. "We have reviewed all qualifying candidates on your planet." It spoke, the words flowing with an almost musical quality. "After extensive analysis, we have selected one student to participate in the Youth Integration Program." Sarah's parents had mentioned the program during dinner last week. Her mother, Dr. Lin Chen, had expressed concerns about the Council's sudden interest in human children. Her father, Dr. James Chen, had stayed unusually quiet during the discussion, his research papers on xenobiology left untouched. "Sarah Chen," the alien called, all 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "You have demonstrated exceptional cognitive abilities and adaptation potential. You are hereby invited to join the first class of human students at the Galactic Council's Center for Interspecies Education." The cupcake slipped from Sarah's fingers. Min caught it before it hit the floor, but the candle had already gone out. The second alien produced a crystalline tablet, its surface swimming with complex equations and patterns that made Sarah's head spin. "These are your test results," it explained. "Your problem-solving capabilities exceed our projected models for human development. You possess a unique combination of analytical and creative thinking that makes you an ideal candidate." Principal Zhang placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "This is a great honor for our school and for humanity," she said, though her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Your parents have already been notified and are on their way." Sarah's mind raced. She had never seen her test results before, had never even known she was being tested. The patterns on the tablet seemed familiar somehow, like puzzles she had solved in her dreams. Her fingers itched to touch them, to understand their complexity. The classroom erupted in excited whispers. Sarah felt Min squeeze her hand under the desk. "You're going to see the stars," her friend whispered, voice mixed with awe and sadness. 30 minutes later, Sarah sat in Principal Zhang's office with her parents. Her mother's face was pale, her father's jaw clenched as the aliens explained the program's details. 1 year of study at the Galactic Council headquarters on Centauri Prime. Access to the most advanced educational resources in known space. A chance to represent humanity among the stars. "The Council's invitation is both an honor and an obligation," the taller alien stated. "Participation will greatly influence future relations between humanity and the galactic community." Sarah watched her parents exchange glances. She recognized their worried expressions from late nights spent discussing their research. But beneath their concern, she saw something else. Fear. "I want to go," Sarah said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "I want to learn." The alien's translator crystals pulsed with approval. Outside the office window, the council ships seemed to shine brighter, their crystalline surfaces reflecting Earth's sunlight like beckoning beacons. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was seeing them for the last time as simple objects of wonder. The first warning sign came during the journey to Centauri Prime. Sarah sat alone in her preparation chamber, a hexagonal room aboard the council ship where crystalline walls shifted between opaque and transparent at random intervals. She hadn't seen another living being since boarding 3 days ago. This isolation period allows for mental adjustment to space travel, the ship's automated system explained when she asked. Sarah knew better. She'd read enough of her parents' research to understand basic quarantine procedures, and this wasn't it. The room's walls cleared again, revealing the swirling colors of faster-than-light travel. Sarah pressed her hand against the cool surface, remembering her mother's last embrace at the spaceport. "Remember your meditation exercises," she had whispered. "Your grandmother's teachings will help you stay centered." A soft chime announced mealtime. The food dispenser hummed, producing another bowl of iridescent nutrient paste. Sarah noticed this batch had a different color pattern than yesterday's. She documented the change in her mind, adding it to her growing list of observations. The ship dropped out of FTL with a subtle shift in gravity. Through the transparent walls, Sarah gasped at her first view of Centauri Prime. The planet's surface glittered with geometric patterns of light, as if someone had arranged countless diamonds in perfect mathematical sequences. "Prepare for arrival," the system announced. "Please remain calm during the transition." The floor beneath Sarah's feet became transparent. She watched in fascination as they descended through layers of atmosphere, each level marked by different colored energy fields. The ship passed through a massive crystalline structure that seemed to function as both a defensive shield and a traffic control system. Landing was silent and smooth. When the door finally opened, Sarah expected to see other students, perhaps even some human officials. Instead, she found herself facing a group of tall, silvery beings with multiple compound eyes. These weren't the same species as her recruiters. These were Archons, the Council's leading race. "Subject Chen, Sarah. Follow," one commanded through its translator crystal. Their formal titles and pleasantries from Earth had vanished completely. They led her through corridors that seemed to reshape themselves as they walked. Sarah memorized the pattern changes, noting how each shift corresponded to subtle variations in the ambient light. The Archons spoke among themselves in crystalline tones that her translator couldn't, or wouldn't, decipher. Her living quarters turned out to be another hexagonal chamber, larger than the one on the ship, but filled with obvious monitoring equipment. Crystalline sensors protruded from every surface, tracking her movements. The bed was more like an examination table, and the food dispenser looked suspiciously similar to medical sampling equipment. "Your assessment begins now," the lead Archon announced. "First phase, response to isolation and environmental stress." Before Sarah could respond, they exited. The door merged seamlessly with the wall, leaving no visible means of escape. The room's temperature began to drop slowly but steadily. Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, closing her eyes as her grandmother had taught her. She regulated her breathing, conserving body heat while maintaining calm. Through her meditation, she began to notice subtle patterns in the room's energy emissions. Hours passed. The temperature continued dropping until her breath fogged in the air. Then, abruptly, heat began pouring in. Sweat replaced shivers, but Sarah maintained her pose. She understood now. This wasn't education. This was experimentation. In the observation room, the Archons watched their instruments with increasing interest. "Subject displays unusual thermal adaptation," one noted. "Increase environmental variables." "Confirmed," another responded. "Proceeding with psychological stress protocols." The walls of Sarah's chamber came alive with projections, scenes of Earth's most violent histories, galactic disasters, mathematical problems designed to induce anxiety. But as they watched their subject, the Archons failed to notice something crucial. Every time the room's systems activated, their control interfaces briefly reflected in the crystalline walls. And Sarah was watching, learning, and remembering every pattern. Sarah traced the patterns in her mind for the 100th time. 3 months of observation had revealed the logic behind the Archon's crystalline technology. Every system pulse, every energy fluctuation followed mathematical sequences she now recognized. Their complexity was elegant rather than confusing, like a symphony written in light and geometry. The daily tests continued. Today, the Archons had filled her chamber with a shimmering mist that made every surface appear to crawl with insects. Sarah remained still, focusing on her breathing while counting the milliseconds between system activations. The fear response they expected never came. Subject demonstrates unprecedented psychological resilience. She heard them murmur through the walls. Their crystalline language had become familiar. Another pattern she had decoded during sleepless nights. Increased stimulus intensity. The mist shifted, forming images of her parents in distress. This was new. Sarah's heart rate spiked briefly before she recognized the mathematical flaw in the projection. Real humans didn't move with such perfect symmetry. She almost smiled at their mistake. When the observers left for their rest cycle, Sarah began her real work. She pressed her palm against the wall near her bed, feeling for the subtle vibration that indicated an active data stream. The Archons' arrogance was their weakness. They never considered that their test subject might understand their technology. Interface detected. She whispered to herself, using English to maintain focus. The wall's crystalline structure responded to bioelectric fields. She had learned this by accident during a particularly cold night. Now she carefully modulated her own body's electric field, a technique discovered through meditation. The wall's surface rippled slightly. Lines of alien code reflected in its faceted surface, confirming her theory about their information storage systems. Sarah had spent weeks memorizing similar patterns during their educational presentations. She began humming softly, matching the resonant frequency of the crystal matrix. More code appeared, responding to the harmonic patterns. The Archons used sound, light, and electricity in combination, but they never expected a human child to grasp the underlying principles. A small success, she accessed their observation logs. Her fingers danced across the crystal surface, leaving trails of light as she navigated their system. The Archons documented everything, their notes revealing dark truths. She wasn't their first test subject, but she was their first human. Processing error in Sector 7. The automated system announced suddenly. Sarah froze. She had pushed too far, too fast. But instead of retreating, she pressed harder. The error message itself was an opportunity, a crack in their perfect system. She remembered her mother's words about handling fragile specimens. Sometimes the smallest pressure in the right spot can change everything. The system's error protocols created new pathways, connections that shouldn't exist. Sarah slipped through them like water finding paths through stone. Their communication network unveiled itself before her, countless channels carrying data between council worlds, all flowing through crystalline matrices that sang with mathematical precision. She could broadcast through any of them. The sound of approaching footsteps forced her to withdraw. The wall smoothed itself just as the door reformed, admitting 2 Archon observers for the night cycle's tests. They carried new equipment, devices that pulsed with uncomfortable frequencies. Begin Phase 4, the lead observer announced. Species evaluation requires deeper psychological access. Sarah felt the new devices powering up, their harmonics setting her teeth on edge. But beneath her calm exterior, a plan was forming. She understood their systems now. More importantly, she understood their blind spots. The observers activated their devices, expecting another night of collecting data on human stress responses. They didn't notice how their test subjects' fingers twitched in precise patterns, matching the rhythm of their own technology. They never imagined that their carefully controlled experiment was about to become a galaxy-wide revelation. Sarah closed her eyes, pretending to endure their tests while her mind raced through crystalline pathways. Tomorrow, when their systems were at peak load during data transmission, she would show them exactly what a human child could do with 3 months of pattern recognition and unlimited motivation. The broadcast hit every human embassy simultaneously. Screens flickered, crystalline communication devices pulsed, and within seconds, the truth of the Youth Integration Program spread across the galaxy. Sarah's carefully compiled evidence played on loops. Temperature extremes, psychological torments, and the Archon's clinical notes about their human test subject. In New Shanghai, Dr. Lin Chen collapsed into her husband's arms as they watched their daughter's recorded message. "Mom, Dad, I'm okay." Sarah's voice remained steady despite her visible exhaustion. "But they need to be stopped. I'm sending you everything. Their technology, their experiments, their plans for other children. I learned their patterns. Now everyone else will too." The reaction began in waves. First came the scientists, xenobiologists, physicists, and engineers poring over the technical data embedded in Sarah's broadcast. Dr. James Chen's research team worked through the night, decoding the principles behind crystalline computing that the Archons had deemed beyond human comprehension. "The arrogance," Dr. Chen muttered, his fingers flying across holographic displays. "They thought we couldn't understand their technology, so they never bothered to hide it properly." Sarah saw it all. Military commands worldwide went to high alert as the full implications became clear. The Galactic Council's ships still hum above major cities, their crystalline forms no longer beautiful but threatening. In underground bunkers and secret facilities, commanders watched their targeting systems suddenly come alive with new understanding. Their defensive matrices follow predictable patterns, a general announced in a global briefing. "Thanks to Sarah's data, we can see the weaknesses. They never thought we'd be able to analyze their systems at this level." Civilian response proved even more intense. Protesters filled streets worldwide, their signs displaying Sarah's image alongside demands for justice. Parents held their children closer, imagining their own young ones subjected to alien experiments. Social media exploded with calls for action, while hackers worldwide began prodding council systems using Sarah's revealed methods. The United Nations convened an emergency session. Representatives from every nation watched in stunned silence as the full recording played. 3 months of systematic torment, documented with cold precision by the Archons themselves. "We trusted them," China's ambassador said, her voice shaking with rage. "We sent them our best and brightest child, and they betrayed that trust in the worst possible way." The Security Council's vote was unprecedented. Unanimous authorization for immediate military action, but humanity's response went far beyond conventional warfare. Sarah's technical data revealed opportunities that transformed Earth's defensive capabilities overnight. In research labs across the planet, scientists began adapting the crystalline technology. The Archon's own arrogance had given humanity the keys to their advanced systems. Sarah's methodical documentation of their patterns became the foundation for a technological revolution. "They thought we were primitive," a quantum physicist explained during a global broadcast. "But they gave a brilliant human child 3 months to study their technology up close. She didn't just learn it. She understood it in ways they never imagined possible." Military forces worldwide began coordinating for the first time in human history. Traditional rivalries faded before the immediate threat. Chinese warships practiced maneuvers alongside American carriers. Russian aerospace fighters shared protocols with European squadrons. A united human fleet took shape, incorporating the newly understood alien principles. In their orbiting ships, the Council representatives began to realize something was wrong. Their supposedly secure networks flickered with unauthorized access. Earth's primitive defense systems suddenly displayed surprising sophistication, and in every human embassy, a child's voice continued broadcasting the truth. The Archons had made a fundamental mistake. They had chosen Sarah to prove humanity's weakness, never considering that a human child's capacity for learning and adaptation might exceed their own rigid patterns. Now, as Earth's united forces prepared for their first faster-than-light journey, that mistake was about to become apparent to the entire galaxy. Sarah's final message played once more across the planet. They wanted to study humanity. Now they're going to learn exactly what that means. Commander James Chen studied the holographic display of Centauri Prime's defenses aboard the stealth ship Nightingale. His niece's data had transformed their mission from impossible to merely difficult. The crystalline defense grid sparkled with familiar patterns Sarah had documented meticulously during her captivity. Their patrol cycles align with planetary rotation. Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, gesturing at the shifting light patterns. Sarah's observations show a 3-minute window during each shift change. That's our insertion point. The rescue team consisted of 12 operators from 6 nations, each chosen for their unique skills. They had trained for 2 weeks using simulation data from Sarah's broadcasts, learning to exploit the weaknesses she had discovered in Archean security systems. Remember, Chen addressed his team, we're not just rescuing one child. We're showing the galaxy that humanity protects its own. He checked the modified pulse rifle at his side, its crystals humming with adapted alien technology. Synchronize frequencies for Phase 1. The Nightingale slipped through Centauri Prime's upper atmosphere, its hull vibrating at exactly the right frequency to appear as background radiation to Archean sensors. Sarah's notes on their detection systems had proven invaluable. 3 kilometers above the Council facility, the ship paused. Insertion in 30 seconds, the pilot announced. Crystalline interference field active. Chen's team gathered in the drop pod, their armor incorporating salvaged alien tech. Each operator carried devices based on Sarah's descriptions of Archean weaknesses, sonic disruptors tuned to crystalline resonance frequencies, electromagnetic pulse generators calibrated to their computing systems. Target locked, Rodriguez confirmed. Sarah's signal is steady. She's still in the testing chamber. The pod dropped, falling through layers of security fields that would have vaporized it a week ago. Now, thanks to Sarah's intelligence, they slipped through holes in the Archean's perfect defense grid. They landed silently on an upper maintenance level, exactly where Sarah's mapped patterns predicted an access point. 3 teams, move out, Chen commanded. Remember your frequencies. They encountered the first Archean guards within minutes. The aliens towered over the human operators, their crystalline armor gleaming. But they never had a chance to react. Sonic pulses hit precise resonance points, shattering their protective fields. Non-lethal electromagnetic bursts disrupted their neural patterns, dropping them unconscious. Security hub cleared, Team 2 reported. Implementing Sarah's virus now. Throughout the facility, crystalline control systems flickered as Sarah's carefully designed program spread. She had encoded it during her captivity, hiding it within the facility's own data patterns. Now it awakened, creating false readings across every security scanner. Chen's team reached the testing chamber level. Through the translucent walls, they saw Sarah sitting calmly in meditation pose. 2 Archean scientists worked at control panels, unaware of the chaos spreading through their systems. Pattern disruption in 3, Chen whispered. 2, 1. The chamber's lights pulsed in a complex sequence, another of Sarah's hidden programs activated by the rescue team's presence. The Archean scientists spun in confusion as their instruments displayed impossible readings. Before they could react, precision stun pulses dropped them. Door controls aren't responding, Rodriguez reported, studying the seamless wall. Sarah opened her eyes and smiled. She pressed her hand against the chamber wall, sending ripples through the crystalline structure. The wall dissolved, reformed, and created a perfect doorway. "Hi, Uncle James," she said, standing smoothly. "Their system passwords are based on crystalline harmonics. I've been practicing." Warning alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Chen lifted his niece easily, noting how small she seemed after all she'd accomplished. "Time to go, everyone." Phase 2. The team moved fast, following their planned extraction route. Behind them, Sarah's virus spread deeper into Archean systems, corrupting their response protocols. Security forces found themselves trapped by their own doors, communications disrupted by impossible feedback loops. They reached the extraction point just as facility's backup systems began to engage. As the Nightingale's retrieval cables pulled them to safety, Sarah looked back at the crystalline spires of her prison. "They wanted to understand humans," she said quietly. "I hope they learned something today." The Earth Embassy on Proxima Station buzzed with activity as representatives from 3 different alien species requested emergency meetings. Sarah sat between her parents in the diplomatic chamber, watching the visitors with careful attention. Her 3 months of captivity had taught her to read alien body language in ways the diplomatic corps was only beginning to understand. The Tyranny delegate stepped forward first, her iridescent feathers rippling with emotion. Through the translator crystal, her voice carried tones of both pain and hope. "We recognize the tests they performed on your child," she said, spreading her wings in a gesture of openness. 50 years ago, they did the same to our younglings. We were not strong enough to resist." Dr. Lin Chen squeezed her daughter's hand as the serpentine Sith representative uncoiled from his gravity chair. "Our species also endured their experiments," he hissed softly. "They claimed to study our potential for violence. In truth, they sought to break our will." The third species, the crystalline Myrians, chimed their agreement. Their faceted bodies reflected the room's light in patterns that Sarah immediately recognized. "Their technology," she whispered to her father, "it's based on Myrian biology. The Archons stole it." The Myrian delegate's surfaces shifted in surprise. "You understand our patterns, young one. Few outside our species can read them." Sarah stood, approaching the crystalline being with respectful curiosity. She modulated her voice to match the Myrians' harmonic frequencies. Their prison was built from copied crystals, but they didn't understand the deeper rhythms. Not like you do. The chamber fell silent as Sarah demonstrated what she had learned, producing sounds that made the Myrians' surface dance with responsive patterns. The delegate's colors shifted to deep blue amazement. A human child learned our ancestral songs from studying Archon technology. She did more than learn, Dr. James Chen explained, activating a holographic display of Sarah's coded messages. She found ways to use their stolen systems against them, ways we could share with others who have suffered. The Tyranny representative's feathers flashed with sudden understanding. The Council's power relies on keeping species isolated, making each of us feel alone in our persecution. But this child's broadcast reached everyone. More delegations arrived as word spread through Proxima Station. The insectoid Vex brought records of their own encounters with Archon experiments. The gaseous Zephyri shared stories of lost children taken for special studies. Each species had thought they were alone in their suffering. Sarah moved among them, learning their languages, understanding their patterns. Her ability to grasp alien communication methods, born from desperate study during captivity, now served to bridge gaps between species. "We can share knowledge," she suggested, demonstrating how she had adapted Myrian crystalline principles to work with Tyranny bioelectric fields. The Archons took pieces from each of us, but never understood how they could work together. The Sith commander's scales rippled with approval. Our stealth technology, combined with human adaptability and Myrian crystal science. The Council would never expect such cooperation. Plans began forming as ancient barriers between species fell. The Vex offered their quantum computing expertise, while the Zephyri proposed ways to use their gaseous nature to infiltrate Archon facilities. Each species brought unique perspectives on the Council's weaknesses. They believed isolation was power, the Tyranny elder observed, watching Sarah help a young Myrian practice human speech patterns. Instead, they created the seeds of their own defeat. A human child showed us we are stronger together. Sarah's parents watched with pride as their daughter became a bridge between worlds. She had entered Archon captivity as a test subject, but emerged as something they never expected. A catalyst for change that would reshape galactic society. The Council thought they could study humanity through one child. Dr. Lin Chen remarked to the assembled delegates. They didn't realize that studying us meant teaching us, and humans never stop learning. The combined research facility beneath the Pacific Ocean hummed with activity. In a vast chamber designed to accommodate multiple species, Sarah moved between workstations, her translator crystal modified to handle 6 different languages simultaneously. Above her, Zephyri scientists floated in specially pressurized chambers, their gaseous forms swirling with excitement as they reviewed new data. "The crystalline matrix accepts the quantum modifications," she explained to a team of human and Myrian engineers. Her fingers danced across a hybrid control panel, demonstrating the integration. We can use Vex computing principles to predict and counter Archon defense patterns. Dr. James Chen watched his daughter with a mixture of pride and amazement. In the 3 weeks since their alliance formed, Sarah's ability to bridge different scientific approaches had accelerated their progress beyond all expectations. The Archons had intended to study human adaptability. Now they were about to experience it firsthand. Deep sea pressure testing is complete, a Sith researcher announced, his scales gleaming under the laboratory lights. The biomimetic hull design works perfectly. We've successfully merged our stealth systems with Tyranny shield technology. Across the chamber, a massive viewscreen displayed their first prototype, a ship that combined technologies from 6 different species. Its hull incorporated living crystal grown using Mirian techniques, powered by Zephyr energy matrices, and protected by overlapping fields of Tyranny bioelectric shields. The Archons always assumed their technology was superior because it was singular, uniform, Sarah observed, adjusting the crystal resonance frequencies. They never considered that diversity could be a strength. A sudden alert drew everyone's attention. The Vex quantum sensors had detected unusual activity in Archon space. The Council was mobilizing their fleet, finally responding to the growing alliance against their authority. They're gathering their forces near Centauri Prime, the Tyranny tactical officer reported, her feathers shifting to warning colors. Traditional attack patterns suggest they'll target our weakest members first. Sarah smiled. But that's what we wanted them to think. She gestured to the prototype ship. Every piece of technology we've developed looks primitive when scanned individually. They won't realize how it all works together. The human-led engineering team had learned from Sarah's experience. Just as she had hidden her understanding behind a mask of compliance, their ships concealed their true capabilities beneath layers of seemingly uncoordinated systems. Production facilities report ready, Commander Chen announced from the command center. Mass manufacturing of the hybrid ships can begin immediately. Around the world and across Allied space, hidden shipyards prepared for action. The Archons had spent centuries keeping species isolated, never imagining they would find common cause. Now that isolation had become a weapon against them, they had no idea what their former test subjects had developed together. Final integration test. Sarah called out, initiating the startup sequence. The prototype ship's systems came alive, each component strengthening the others. Mirian crystals channeled Zephyr energy through Vex-designed circuits, creating defense fields that shifted like Sith scales and adapted like Tyranny wings. In the observation deck, representatives from Earth's governments watched alongside their alien counterparts. 3 months ago, they had sent a child into space, trusting the Council's promises. Today, that same child stood at the heart of a technological revolution. Launch sequence beginning. The automated systems announced. All species protocols integrated successfully. The prototype rose from its cradle, water cascading from its crystalline hull. It moved with impossible grace for its size, combining the best attributes of all its creators. In orbit, satellites tracked its signature, or tried to. The ship shifted between different species recognition patterns, becoming effectively invisible to standard scans. Sarah touched the crystal panel one last time, sending a final command. Throughout the facility, similar ships began powering up. The Archons had tried to prove humanity's violent nature through cruel experiments on a child. Instead, they had inspired an unprecedented cooperation that would reshape the galaxy. All ships report ready, Commander Chen announced. Operation Unified Response is now active. The combined fleet emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation above Centauri Prime. Each ship moved in harmony with the others, their hybrid technologies singing together in frequencies that made the Archons' sensors scream in confusion. At the fleet's heart, aboard the flagship Stellar Bridge, Sarah stood with representatives from all 7 allied species. "The Archon High Council demands your immediate surrender," came the transmission, its crystalline tones sharp with anger. "Your primitive amalgamation of technologies cannot hope to match our superiority." Sarah stepped forward, every species translation crystals amplifying her voice. "You wanted to study humanity," she responded. "Now you can see what we actually do when challenged. We don't break. We adapt, grow, and bring others with us." The Archon defense grid activated, filling space with deadly energy patterns. But Sarah had spent 3 months memorizing those patterns. The Allied fleet flowed through the gaps like water through stone, each ship's hybrid systems predicting and countering the Archon's moves. "Impossible," the Archon leader declared as their first defensive line collapsed. "Our systems are perfect. Our patterns are absolute." "That's exactly why you failed," Sarah explained, working with the Mirian crystal engineers to adjust their approach vectors. "Perfect patterns don't adapt. They just break when something new comes along." The Tyranny wings of the fleet swooped through electromagnetic storms that should have destroyed them, protected by Sith-inspired adaptive shielding. Zephyri energy weapons, refined through human innovation, disabled Archon ships without destroying them. The Vex quantum computers predicted and countered every strategic response. "Final approach," Commander Chen announced. "Sarah, it's your call." She looked at the Archon capital city spread below them. The same spires that had once imprisoned her now seemed smaller, less intimidating. "They wanted to prove we were violent," she said. "Let's prove them wrong in a way they'll never forget." Instead of weapons, the Allied fleet released swarms of specialized drones. Each one carried templates of the combined technology that Sarah and the others had developed together. The drones attached themselves to Archon structures, beginning a transformation that no amount of defensive programming could stop. "What are you doing?" the Archon leader demanded, watching their perfect crystalline city begin to change. "Giving you what you wanted. A real study of humanity." Sarah's voice carried across every channel. "Your testing facilities are being converted into actual schools. Your isolated research chambers will become collaboration centers. Every prison you built to break other species will transform into a place where we can all grow together." The Archon defense forces found themselves unable to respond. Their weapons had been designed to fight traditional attacks, not this strange combination of cooperation and transformation. Some of their own crystals began resonating with the changes, recognizing patterns older than the Archon's rule. "The Council's authority cannot be challenged," the Archon leader insisted, even as more of their city transformed. "Our system maintains order." "No," Sarah corrected gently. "Your system maintained isolation, and isolation is just another kind of prison." She gestured to her allies, the Tyranny with their fluid grace, the Tith with their adaptive wisdom, the crystalline Mirians humming with ancient knowledge. Real strength comes from learning from each other. Throughout the city, young Archons watched in fascination as their rigid structures bloomed with new possibilities. The combined fleet held position, not as conquerors, but as guardians of a transformation. Sarah's primitive hybrid technology spread through their networks, replacing control with connection. "You have a choice," Sarah announced to the Archon leadership. "Join us in building something new, or remain isolated in your perfection. But you will never again use children as test subjects." The Archon leader's response was lost in a surge of messages from their own people. The younger generation, seeing the possibilities in this transformed technology, had already made their choice. Their perfect patterns began to shift, to grow, to change. Sarah smiled as the sun rose over a city no longer made of pristine crystal, but alive with the combined light of 7 species working together. The Archons had tried to prove humanity's nature through the suffering of a child. Instead, that child had taught the galaxy a different lesson, that the greatest strength comes not from perfection, but from growing together.